So what happens when being immortal just gets boring? When you're the last creature of your kind and you're so fed up with existing that you decide to, I don't know, completely re-engineer yourself. Today, we're going to break down this incredible, haunting story about the very last vampire in a world where humans are just a memory.
Right off the bat, the story hits you with this line. No humans had survived. It's so stark, so final. This one sentence sets the entire stage. We're not just in a post-apocalyptic world, we're in a post-human one, and that changes everything. So our vampire, Vestar, is rattling around in this huge, silent graveyard of a planet. It's what's left after a totally devastating war between humans and androids. And honestly, it was a war so complete that asking who won is just pointless. The outcome was the same for our species, total extinction, which leaves Vestar to inherit an empty, quiet world.
And the story just paints this picture of absolute stillness. You can almost see it. Dust just kind of dancing in the moonlight when a door creaks open. It's a tiny detail that tells you just how long it's been since anything or anyone has moved through this place. The world is just slowly decaying.
And right in the middle of all this ruin, what do we find? A throne. An old velvet throne. It's this amazing symbol of a past that was probably full of Gothic drama and power. But now it's just a dusty chair in an empty room. A throne for a king with absolutely no kingdom left to rule.
So how does the last vampire on Earth even survive? Well, forget everything you've seen in the movies. He isn't charming victims in the dead of night. No, he's reheating old, bagged blood from a hospital cellar in a microwave. The whole romance and mystique of being a vampire is just completely stripped away. It's been replaced by this grim, mundane, and kind of gross chore. And this bleak, lonely existence is really taking a toll on Vestar. I mean, he's not just lonely, he is suffering from a terminal case of cosmic boredom. It's the ultimate curse of immortality, right? Without anyone to connect with, without any change or growth, eternal life isn't a gift. It's like a stagnant pond, and he's just been staring at his own reflection for way too long.
And this right here really gets to the heart of his problem. He can still remember the thrill of the hunt, the power, the adrenaline of a live extraction. But that's all gone. Now it's just the grim routine of choking down this awful, metallic-tasting substitute. His entire existence has been downgraded from like a grand dramatic opera to just boring paperwork.
It's also worth noting that Vestar is a damp here. That means he's part vampire, part human. And this really shapes how he sees himself. He thinks of himself as having a rugged character, which, you can imagine, makes his current pathetic situation feel even more like an insult.
His frustration runs so deep, he even hates his own name. He complains that Vestar sounds like a piece of faulty tech, like a bootleg router. He wishes he was called something like Clint or Cliff, something that matches that rugged self-image he has. It's a funny little detail, but it really shows this profound identity crisis he's going through. He doesn't even feel like himself anymore.
But Vestar isn't the type to just sit around and complain forever. He's a creature of action. He's smart. So faced with an eternity he just can't stand anymore, he decides to use science to force a change. A very strange change.
And just look at this recipe for change. This isn't some dusty old spell book or a deal with a demon. Vestar is basically a modern-day mad scientist. He's using the toxic leftovers of a dead civilization, an abandoned hospital lab, spent nuclear fuel rods, to cook up a whole new kind of life. It's like post-apocalyptic biohacking. It just proves he's not just some old relic, he's a radical innovator.
And he doesn't just casually do this. No, this is a ceremony. He gets dressed up meticulously in a full suit and bow tie. He sits on his velvet throne one last time. This is not just him taking some medicine. This is a deliberate ritual. It's a funeral for the being he was, and maybe the birth of whatever's coming next.
So he drinks the vial, he watches the sunrise one last time, and then the story just completely floors us with the craziest part of his plan. The change isn't instant. No, his solution requires patience on a scale that is almost impossible to imagine.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective. He makes his big move, drinks the vial, and then he just waits. He slumps over in his chair as the sun comes up, and he just stays there. He sits there long enough for entire civilizations to have risen and fallen, if there was anyone left to build them.
1,000 years. Think about that. He sits motionless on his throne for a full millennium, just waiting for his self-made biological update to finally kick in. The level of commitment here is just staggering.
And then, after 1,000 years, the update finally arrives. And let me tell you, it's not some graceful, beautiful evolution. It is pure, unfiltered body horror. It's this grotesque, mechanical birth as his organic body starts to give way to something metallic, alien, and frankly terrifying.
And the story just leaves us there, right on the edge of this horrifying transformation. It cuts away before we see what he fully becomes. And that, of course, forces us to stop and think, what has Vestar actually done here? Is this an evolution, or is it just a really complicated form of self-destruction?
When you look at it like this, you really see the massive uncertainty. We know who he was, right? A bored, self-aware Dhampir who lived on blood. But this new thing, we have no clue what it is, what it eats, or, and this is the really big one, if the consciousness we knew as Vestar is even still in there at all.
And that's the massive question we're left with. In his desperate escape from the prison of a boring immortal life, did he actually find freedom? Or did he just trade a familiar cage for one that is infinitely more complex, and maybe even more terrifying? You could argue this was a success. He transcended the limits of biology. But there's a much darker take, which is that he basically committed a very unique form of suicide, destroying the very self he was trying to save. Did he kill the lonely god just to create an unthinking machine? The story doesn't give us any easy answers, which forces you to wonder about the real cost of change, and whether escaping who you are is even possible, or if you just become a different kind of monster in the end.